Rico stabbed the shovel in the ground and saw the drone back on the ground. He went to pick it up, but no drone. The drone had always come back. What gives? Rico checked his phone to see if maybe it left some kind of message. On the screen was several warning messages. He swished by to get a look at the map. A bleeping red marker of a last known location on his map around 100 yards away. He could walk it, but he didn't want to get lost, and it was turning to dusk as the sky turned different beautiful colors every few minutes, and with every few minutes the temperature dropped 2 more degrees. A small ounce of panic hit his stomach because he didn't want to ride his bike and plow over the drone somehow. The map said the beacon was accurate within a few feet. Rico bit back his fear, hopped on his bike with no helmet so he could see. The visor that protected his eyes was fogged to reduce glare and protect identity, but it was hindering his vision. He rubber webbed the helmet to the cage on the back of his bike along with the drone's backpack and puttered along, holding his phone between the handlebars. Rico rumbled along slowly, half pedaling, half motoring as he got closer. 100 yards felt like a mile, with all of the bumps and switches he had to be cautious of, and it kept getting darker. A new wave of anxiety, stronger this time. The darkness, no moon. It was going to be so dark. So dark. The thought trailed off and echoed in his mind. He fumbled around with the button, mashing, trying to find out how to activate the motorcycle's powerful LED headlight. It would drain his battery, but he needed it, having no flashlight other than the tracker free app that activated the flash function on his phone as a light. After a few button mashing attempts, he got the light on, but the lighting was red at dusk levels. Any attempt at casting light was almost completely washed out and would be useless until dark. His phone said he was getting closer and closer to the beacon. 25 yards, 20, 10. He slowed down and got off the bike, headlight shining now into near darkness, looking for some kind of emergency read beacon or something like that. He reminded himself this was the last known good location, not where it was. It could be closer out, or further, or in pieces. Then a thought crossed his mind. Someone could have taken the precious drone. He searched for tire tracks. What if it was someone on a quad, or something saw it flying around and wanted to take it? There were drone thieves out there, or people who simply hated drones for being invasive, or were possibly anti-military tech tinfoil hat wearing neckbeards. The thought made him shudder in a half-sarcastic gesture. Rico searched on the drone app for his phone for some kind of alert function or battery backup. After swishing through the phone app screens as the sun completed its setting process, he found the emergency buttons and mashed them all. He stopped to listen, his heart not even beating, it seemed like, waiting for a sign. There was nothing. The drone wasn't there. Rico made the last few steps until he was right on top of the waypoint the phone had set. As soon as he got on top of it, it triangulated a new emergency position, but the location was moving in real time. Without thinking, Rico turned to face the motorcycle, but couldn't see it, as he saw a blinking light on his phone, and then it dimmed. At once he realized his phone had synced as a location on his phone map. He had to hurry. He jogged towards the light as fast as he could, concerned that he would be completely lost in the cold night without his bike. The temperature having already dropped so many more degrees, and Rico starting to get cold, having only moments earlier been standing idly. Rico hopped on the bike and headed towards the next waypoint, the notification saying it only had a minute or two of emergency flight. He was programmed to land safely instead of crashing with its remaining power, then trying to power back up with the tiny solar panels it had built into the top of its frame. The battery backup was barely enough for a beacon in 2 minutes of flight, though, or so. It must have known that the remaining energy wasn't enough to get back, so it stayed put, but something must have got it, or maybe it tried to take off again and the wind took it further off course. Rico didn't know. Maybe the wind was still blowing it around. He didn't feel any wind, though, but he was very focused. Almost tunnel vision, but not quite. Old instincts kept him on track, but not blind to his peripheral. Rico pedaled and pedaled, trying to get energy back into the bike so he could keep his forward lamp at full power. He was being distracted, though. A halo with a compass heading kept readjusting where he was supposed to be going, and then he heard it in the distance, the big engine that he had heard before on the road. Was he near a road and didn't realize it? Rico was concerned he could fly right into a ditch at any moment for some reason and slowed down and then stopped. Rico froze and turned his light off, unsure of what to do. He didn't see any headlights. Maybe they knew this area well or drove around with military night vision tech or something. He thought for a second and couldn't think of a military training base or anything nearby. No reason for the military or even private contractors to be operating anywhere near here in an official capacity. His eyes had become unfocused, and the drone quickly altered path and headed towards him as the louder engine noise felt like it was getting closer and closer. As if willing himself to evade potential capture, Rico's imagination took over in the pitch-black darkness. He turned his bicycle around and started pedaling away. He would try to find the drone in the morning if he could. Hopefully the drone would have enough energy saved for a final beacon burst, or maybe there'd be some clues. Either way, Rico was out of there, and pedaled off into the night until he couldn't hear the engine anymore. As he pedaled through the darkness, pitching dangerously back and forth, trying not to wipe out, he kept having brief flashbacks of a winding road and crash. Every time he imagined himself crashing and being fatigued, the memory would jolt him back into being awake and alert as he kept pedaling as fast as he could safely go. Almost crashing and burning a few times. Once he'd gone a few hundred yards in what he felt like was the correct direction, he turned his forward lamp back on and checked his phone. Behind him, the drone flew in with a barely discernible low hum and clamped onto the drone backpack with the subtlety audible magnets activating to secure the device. Rico pedaled back to his homestead as fast as his legs would go, readjusting accordingly to the phone that had reset the waypoint too. It guided him around the worst bumps, but didn't stop him from rocking around from settling boulders. There was enough power left in his bike, though, to keep steadying him instead of sending him off flying to bump his head on a rock or something. Before long, he saw his ditch filling with water and followed its reflection home. He got to his door, unlocked it like he had so many times without thinking. Then he shoved his bike inside and powered the light off. Went back out, grabbed his tea jar, and sat back down on the kitchen floor like he had so many times before. After a few big gulps of his chamomile tea, a friend of his had preferred for so long, his nerves started to calm down and the pain pill started to wear off. He dug for a new one and popped it in, not out of habit, but to knock the pain out so he could sleep here in a bit when it fully kicked in. He drank more of his gallon tea and relaxed more, the tea filling in the gaps of his mouth, soaking into the gauze, relieving the pain and swelling more. He looked around, slightly groggy, and took a few bites of his lunch blend they had left over in his pocket. Rico steadied himself on the counter and hoisted himself up, dizziness threatening to take over. He'd had this idea of plugging the bike into the inverter to get it charged up to full power in case there was another emergency. The beehive drone backpack was still sitting in the cage along with the helmet, the drone now back in its inset, charging through the juncture. The battery on the pack showing it was also less than half, the drone's battery indicator blinking red. Rico plugged in the pack, the bike, and his phone all to the inverter and checked the charge controller. His battery was at full power, and at a glance, the water tank's charge controller showed the water was hot and ready to go. Rico nodded at the hot water tank and decided he was long overdue for a shower. His pants and shirt could go weeks without a washing, but those undies had to go. He tossed his dirties in an empty commercial-grade mop bucket and brought a clean pair with him that he'd been hanging up on the clothesline in his greenhouse of sorts. It hadn't had plants in it for years or longer, and it was his laundry room now. Some homemade soap he traded from a friend sat in the top of the heavy-duty yellow mop bucket where he did his laundry. Same soap he used in the shower. Oh well, who's ever gonna know? Clean was clean, or whatever. After the shower, he threw all of his clothes back on, along with his clean undies, and passed out on the kitchen floor in his cowboy hat. As he drifted off to sleep, he was trying to recall if the drone had been in the pack all along, and if he was chasing a ghost, Or maybe it was the other way around. He checked the map in the morning, after the drone synced with his phone, and see what it said it had been up to.